It's working, and I have no idea what I did. Yes. This one's working. Everybody in the back wants to wait. Go away front. We're going to get this meeting started.
As always, I start with a one verse just to think about. This one has to be First Thessalonians chapter 6, chapter 5, verse 6.
Nope.
He concludes by saying, but he says this, therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. That watch and sober is a Greek word for spiritual. So pay attention to that verse. Go look it up for yourself. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this meeting. We thank you for these folks turning on this lovely evening. We do pray for Dave and any in the audience that don't know what his afflictions are. Please see the board afterwards and they can explain it. But Dave needs your prayers. We do appreciate all that you give us, Lord. The weather, the rain last week, we do pray for a little bit more, and we pray for a good meeting, and let the information penetrate our hearts, and most of all, give us guidance as what to do when we receive this. Please let us be silent, but act in our own sphere of influence and do something for your glory. It's in Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, just to elaborate on Dave Baldinger. Dave Baldinger is the spearhead of PTCC, Pennsylvania Taxpayers Cyber Coalition. He really has been the one, the driving force behind property tax elimination for a long time. And Dave is having some health problems. He's a rather large guy and he's getting smaller. They don't really know what's going on. He's not keeping his food down, et cetera, et cetera. But we really need patriots like Dave to stay in the battle. And just pray for Dave Baldinger. Again, he's the chairman of PTCC. For those of you who don't know him, he's been up here as a speaker at times. And at his own accord, he goes out to Harrisburg, and he fights for the cause, and fights individually, he gets other people together, he travels the state, and it's for all of our benefit, really, so keep that man in prayer, he really needs it. Our sponsor tonight, where is he? Right here. Where? Oh, there he is. How you doing, Ron? Sorry to see you back there.
Good evening, everyone. And I'm Ron Rothenberg with Rothenberg Insurance Services. Can you hear me back there? Okay. Can you hear me? It's not working again. No, it's not working. I don't need it. Okay. I'm Ron Rothenberg with Rothenberg Insurance Services. And we are a full-service independent insurance agency located on Avenue, West Reading. And I'll be in the back there at the table later. If you should have any questions or if I help in any way, please let me know. I'd also like to thank you once real quick to remind you that West Reading is
Thanks, Ron. Is the microphone working? What'd you do, Sam? Whoa! Okay, turn it down a little. Okay, it's working really good now. I'd like to ask Carol Gardecki. Hey, Sam, it is a little loud. Can you tone it down? Now.
Okay, I'm pretty loud myself, so I'll hold it away a little bit. My Constitution classes for October will be on Wednesday the 7th, that's 6 p.m., and on Monday the 12th, that's 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. So Wednesday the 7th at 6 p.m. and Monday the 12th, 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. So you can choose any one of those 3 classes. They're going to be the same topic, and come and join us. We have a great time and we learn a lot.
Thank you, Carol. Andy? Good evening, Patriots. Oh, come on, you guys can do better than that. Good evening, Patriots. There you go, that's great. I was talking to some people in the back, and I asked one gentleman, I won't mention his name, I never met him before, I said, why are you here tonight? He goes, because our country's going to hell. How many people feel that way? Darn right. Okay, a couple announcements. First of all, there's going to be a debate for the sheriff's election, which is coming up in November. So this is going to be sponsored by the Neighborhood Voter Network. It's going to be held at the Kempton Fire Department on October 14th at 7:30. Now, Chris Smith, who runs that organization, Chris is somewhere here, he's going to raise his hand as soon as there he is. Now, Chris in the blue shirt, if you have any questions about that later on, please check with him, he has all the details. But basically, this will be the 2 candidates that are running for the sheriff's position of Berks County. It'll be under Republican ticket, would be Sheriff Eric Weeknick, and then under the Democrat ticket would be Constable Lester Klott. So they're going to have a little, won't be like last night's debate. And Jim McInkelly's not going to be there, so this will be a controlled debate where people can ask questions, listen to their viewpoints, get a better understanding as to where each candidate is coming from. You know, there'll be some ground rules, of course, that we'll expect to follow. They'll get a few minutes to talk about why they want to be the sheriff. And also there'll be questions from the audience. If you attend, you can write down those questions and they'll be posted to each candidate. They'll have so much time, they'll a lot amount of time to answer the questions. It won't be like forever and ever. Again, we're not going to allow any hecklers or rudeness to these 2 gentlemen because we want to honor them for, you know, the service that they want to give us here in Berks County. So again, that's going to be at the Kempton Fire Hall, October 14th, 7:30. Estimated time would be about an hour, unless people there have a lot of questions that they want to bring up to the candidates. And it can't go like last night, 3 hours. That was a little ridiculous. Okay, 2 no commercials. Okay, now, how do they do that without going to the bathroom? Maybe they have some other 2 other quick announcements. This Sunday, the Berks County Oath Keepers is having their monthly meeting down the street at Wegmans Restaurant, 6 o'clock. And the speakers will be our state CPT leader, community preparedness team leader for the state of Pennsylvania. That's David Laverty and his son Patton Laverty. They're going to talk about tactical awareness, and they're going to show people who attend some nice equipment that probably is too expensive for any of us to buy, but it's nice to know what's out there that you can use to protect yourself and your family just in case you know what happens. And my last announcement here is some of you already talked to our friend Joshua Smith, Joshua Prince. I got Jim Smith mixed up because they're standing together back there. They look alike. They're twins. Joshua Prince has decided, and you can talk to him, he's going to be making a presentation here shortly. Okay, I don't want to steal that from him, but I am going to start from the front here. If you did not sign in the back, there's a petition to sign. If you know Joshua and you believe in what you're going to hear from Rod, I'm going to start this petition with a pen from the front. If you didn't sign in the back and you support Joshua, sign this, pass it back and forth, I'll pick it up in the back. Thank you so much. Thanks, Andy. Now I would like to ask the lovely Linda Rankador to come up here. She's wearing a lovely red, I don't know who the fashion people are, so.
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad to see all of you. I know I get up here every month and I say exactly the same thing. Welcome, nice to see you, but I want to tell you I really, really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm so glad that you're here. It makes what we do worthwhile when people are coming to listen to what we do, all the hard work that we do. It would really be bad if nobody would come, and I'm very grateful that you all came. There's a sheet in the back at my table that has other local Tea Party groups, their times that they meet, and I think there's directions how to get there. So if you'd like to pick that up. And if there's anybody here for the first time and you want to become a member, fill out an application at my desk in the back. There is no charge. We do not charge you. You know, remember, freedom is free. No. The meetings are free, but freedom isn't. Okay. Oh boy, I don't know. Anyway, fill out an application, and that way you'll get on our email list, and then you'll know what's going on all the time. Now, I just have a couple little. I still have time. Yeah. Okay. Remember last month, that those of you that were here, I did a pin drop story. I have two others, real short, that are really great, and I want to share them with you. The first one is JFK's Secretary of State, Dean Rusk, was in France in the early 60s when de Gaulle decided to pull out of NATO. De Gaulle said he wanted all U.S. military out of France as soon as possible. Rusk responded, "Does that include those who are buried here?" De Gaulle did not respond. You could have heard a pin drop. And the second one, when in England at a fairly large conference, Colin Powell was asked by the Archbishop of Canterbury if our plans for Iraq were just an example of empire building by George Bush. He answered by saying, "Over the years, the United States has sent many of its fine young men and women into great peril to fight for freedom beyond our borders. The only amount of land we have ever asked for in return is enough to bury those that did not return." You could have heard a pin drop. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you, Dale. Sam?
Thanks, Joey. Before I start, I want to say a few words regarding our sponsor, Ron Rothenberger. I've known Ron for quite a few years, do business with him. As a matter of fact, as recent as yesterday, he gave me a quote. Great prices, great service. I suggest do yourself a favor and at least have him give you a quote on one of your insurances. So I highly recommend Ron. Okay, now BCP business. Folks, it's that time of year again, BCP board elections. I'm going to read from our bylaws. The third Thursday in September, at our general meeting, the election committee shall announce that nominations will be open from the first day in October to October 31st. Nominations will be accepted in writing, email, or U.S. mail to the chairman of the election committee and posted promptly on the BCP website. Folks, even though the official nomination does not start until October 1st, we will accept unofficial nominations tonight to the end of the month, hold them until the 1st, and then post them on the website. We have 4 board vacancies and also assorted committee slots that need to be filled. Like most volunteer organizations, there's more work to be done than people to do them. We're no exception. That's why this year we're really counting on some of you to step up. If we do not fill these slots that we have, we're simply not going to be able to do the work that we need to be done to give you the quality programs that you like here, but more importantly, to solicit, go to Harrisburg, and fight for the causes that we believe in. So folks, we really, really need you to step up. We have people that come here from the Heritage Foundation and also from other organizations. They travel throughout the state, speeches and so forth to the other Tea Party groups. This gives them a very good feel of the Tea Party movement in Pennsylvania. The feedback that we get from them is that we are one of, if not the key Tea Party in Pennsylvania. Folks, this in no way reflects on any other groups. We all are on the same team. We all are working together, fighting for the same cause. However, based on this feedback, if we do not fill these vacancies and operate efficiently, or, God forbid, not operate at all, there will be a loss in Pennsylvania to the Tea Party group. So it's very important, folks. We need some of you, as we said, please step up this year. Now look, with the change in the governorship, we do not know what's going to happen in Harrisburg. So if we expect to accomplish anything, we're going to need the support of the Tea Party group. We need to stay on these politicians. We need to keep their feet to the fire. And in order to do that, we must continue to show them that we're a strong organization and not become a paper tiger. In order to keep us doing that, we have to have a strong board, and folks, you people got to be part of it. Now, I know some of you cannot help, but maybe you can suggest someone or encourage someone to help. Or maybe you can help just a little bit. Please talk to us, find out what it's all about, what's needed. We really need you folks. And look, hey, no training, there's no experience, free training. So come and see us, and we'll talk to you at the end of the meeting. So thanks, folks, enjoy the meeting. Up next is Rod Miller, Chairman of the Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Sam. We're right on schedule. I can screw that up in a hurry, I'm sure. Okay, legislative report is rather succinct this month. As they're in recess. I don't want to demean them, but when I was a kid, recess was a couple of minutes during the school day. Their recess goes all summer. So, I don't have an awful lot to report what took place in Harrisburg. I do want to talk about one item, and that's SB HB 76. The other ones I talked about last month, I'm not going to go through them all again, but I can just say this about the property tax bill. The most current information I have was 3 days ago. In fact, David Ballinger filled me in again. But the last go around was the House passed HB 504, which was not a real good, solid elimination of property tax bill, but as a way of getting a bill out of the House and over to the Senate. The intent of the Senate was, or still is, to redo that bill, if not gut it, and make it look like SB 76, and throw it back to the House and let them sit on it or move on it. But if the upper chamber passes something and sends it to the lower chamber, they're pretty much on the spot to get that thing through and passed and get it on the governor's desk. The governor, as you know, or you might know from past discussions, he put his own bill through that wants to raise income and property tax and give us 50% property tax relief. But that does not end the problem, because the way that bill is worded, or what his intention is, school boards can still raise your taxes as time passes, and the money he's collecting between income and property, income and sales tax would be far less than what he claims, actually far more than what he claims for property tax relief. In other words, it's going to be hidden tax used for his own projects. So collectively, we're all opposing the Governor Wolf's plan, and we'll see where we go in the not too distant future on what was 504 now. It's, of course, in the Senate, hopefully, is a revised SB 76. What can you do? If you do anything, at least email or phone Senator Corman, who's championed this bill and assured us that he will stand for nothing less than abolishment of school property tax. Corman is the sponsor, one of the sponsors, but he's the Senate Majority Leader, and he has a lot of pull about what happens in Harrisburg. So keep him on our side and don't be timid in letting him know we expect him to stay on it and appreciate his support. You can do the same thing in the House. Representative Reed is doing the same thing in the House. He also champions SB or HB 76. In either case, these two are the driving force to see to it that this gets, if nowhere else, on the governor's desk. Will he veto it? It'd be pretty embarrassing if he does, but he could. He could veto it in favor of his own bill. We'll find that out, but I don't give the Republicans a pass on this, as I've said before. They controlled all three branches for 4 years. They could have got it through. There was no reason they couldn't get it through, and there's no reason Corbett would not have signed it. So by them just dragging their feet for 4 years, now it's a new governor of the opposite party, and now they're starting to run these bills, property tax, pension reform, you name it, liquor stores. He's going to veto these. Property tax, I'm not sure, but the rest of them, he doesn't want to go to a 401k for public employees. He wants the defined benefit program, which is bankrupting us. It's bankrupting the state. It's over a $50 billion hole in the program now. So I fault the Republicans for 4 years of letting this get to where it is. I'm not a partisan politician. I'm just watching what they're doing and mostly what they're not doing. So if you remember back in Tubridge's day, they had a do-nothing House and Senate controlled by the Republican Party, and it was a bloodbath. The Democrats took over everything. Could happen again. The flip side is, instead of it happening again, get a few more senators elected, and we have a veto-approved Senate if they're a Republican majority, and then it doesn't matter what is vetoed by Wolf to get it through. So that's the story on property tax. I won't go into the rest because, as I said, there's not much going on right now. And probably my next meeting new bills, new numbers will get reduced. It'll be the same bill with a different number. I got an editorial by email the other day, a Rush Limbaugh editorial. And I went through it, and he made some strong points that I want to make here now. He pointed out how the Tea Party movement basically filled a void where the status quo politicians ignored the constituents and wanted what they wanted. You know who they are, Painters, McConnells. We're just a nuisance to them. He pointed out how the Tea Party movement started in 2010. We go further than that. How many here were on those buses when we went to D.C. in the end of 2009? No, there's a few here. That's when it all started. We were down there. We were the beginning of the movement. And 2010 was when we started holding our monthly meetings, and other groups moved in also. But as Sam said earlier, we are the T group. We are the group in Pennsylvania. That's the driving force. And if these other groups fail, we all fail. It's important this network continue. Well, anyway, as Rush Limbaugh pointed out, where, in fact, what has the Republican status quo done to help the Tea Party movement? Something that we're a shill of the Republican Party. If you recall, the IRS would not give Tea Party movements tax-exempt status. And during that period of time, did the Republican Party do anything to push that forward? And the answer is no. They left us hang because the status quo Republicans just want to see us go away so they can be happy in their job and live happily ever after, get their pensions, their lifetime paychecks, and all that goes with it. So it's important to us to stay on top of this and see to it that the Republican status quo doesn't discourage us. As far as the Democrats go, as you know, they pulled a few things to try to demean us as well. If you recall the Wall Street sit-in, that was a show of the Democrat Party. Bunch of liberals up there just doing what they do to try to make it look like that we are the problem, and in fact, we are not the problem, we are the solution. I think the conclusion of that scenario is the Republican Party is its own worst enemy. The Republican Party and their operation is really the reason for the rise of the Donald Trumps and the like. Not only Donald Trump, but Corley and Dr. Carson. These are all non-politicians. And the Republican Party better smarten up because these three speak our language. And unless the Republican Party smartens up, they're going to find themselves in the majority in the House and the Senate in Washington, and then we start over. And the only reason I could even think of supporting the Republican Party is they got a few conservatives in there, and they got a Tea Party caucus within the party itself that carries our water for us. So, all things considered, that's got to be our hope, that we collectively take over the Republican Party with the likes, and I'm not endorsing Trump, I'm just saying the likes of Trump, what he's saying, I once said, whether he's the right guy for the job, you decide. But what is being said by these folks that are not partisans, probably other than Cruz, who disenfranchised himself from the whole status quo out there, but he's saying the right thing. So anyhow, that's what that is. I can only say that Washington's movement can transcend right to the Pennsylvania movement. As I said, those folks up there, they're not hearing us. Property tax, pension reform, liquor store privatization, paycheck protection, right to work. None of that stuff gets through for 4 years. It's going to be fun for the next 4 years. They're going to make it look like they're trying to do something. And then when Wolf vetoes, they're going to say, hey, we tried. Hey, You didn't try for 4 years. We did take care of some of that when we got Pelesi out and we got Corman in. It remains to be seen if Corman's the right guy for the job, but I know certainly Pelesi wasn't. Okay. I bring all this up as a more or less a segue into the issue. Last month, as I said, I'm tired of chasing legislation. Our committee, our legislative committee, tired of chasing legislation because they're not doing their job. So we developed a voting record, a score sheet. Other organizations have similar sheets. We put ours together with those issues I raised. Property tax, pension reform, liquor stores, right to work, paycheck protection, gun control, and do you accept your pension? We want to know. We want to know if they're sponsoring these bills. We want to know if they voted for these bills. And if this scorecard of every politician in the state, Senate and House, gets a bunch of zeros across the sheet, and then on top of that, yes, he's taking a pension, and we're checking that out for the right to know laws. If he's a zero across the sheet and takes his pension, he's a liability to all of us. He's got to go. And it's up to the Tea Parties in other areas that this guy represents. They got to get him. We can't get him. We've done a pretty decent job in Berks County. We got every Berks County politician signed on the property tax bill. Did they want to do that? I don't know, but if they're running scared, we scare them. Now, the catch to that is, Wolf has his plan. If he gets his plan on the surface, the question is, are his Democrat colleagues going to jump on his ship, jump off of ours? Remains to be seen. We're watching them. That's our job. That's the legislative committee's job. Anyway, we're going to try to get this scorecard completed. It's going to take a lot of work. And when we have that completed, I'm ready to disseminate it across the state to tell you other folks in other Tea Party movements, hey, he's your problem, he's got to go. When he's your problem, he's my problem, because his voting record is not in my best interest. I can only say, in addition to that, is the Tea Party, the Legislative Committee, we're shorthanded. As Sam said, other groups are shorthanded. This takes work. I can't keep doing it anymore, folks. I can manage it, but I need workers to do the job. And I just want people who are willing to say, I'll take that one bill, SB 71, pensions. What do you want me to do? That's an example. I want you to look up the bill. If it's last year's bill, then you reintroduce it. If it was the 2014-15 session, as opposed to the 15-16 session, I just want you to look up the bill, find out who the co-sponsors are, find out who the prime sponsor is, did it get voted on, and that information needs to get back to our spreadsheet lady, Miss Sue. Where's Sue? Sue's in the back. Sue fills in the sheet for us. We have to get the information so she can fill it in. Once the sheet looks pretty much filled, we're ready to take the next step. But if some of you folks don't step forward and say, put me down, I can do my computer a little bit, I know how to deal with that, and you show me how to chase these bills, we'll show you how to do that. And then all is in your court. You don't have to go to meetings, you can do it at home, a phone call, an email to Sue, and that basically is how much we'd ask you to do. So it's not really time consuming, it's just being able to do the research. Okay, that's the extent of my legislative report. Next thing I want to mention is, as Andy started to mention, I was requested to make some comments this evening relative to our speaker, relative to where he's going. One of the judges in Berks County has just announced he's retiring at the end of the year. And that's going to be a new seat to be filled. It'll take an appointment. It'll take an appointment to fill his term. I think it's 2 years. There'll be attorneys probably looking for that seat and probably petitioning to get the appointment. I've had problems with First County courts for years, individually, not collectively, although I do recall Judge Hess one time said he was going to sue me for defamation. But all I said that time, after I was suing him for, suing regarding a Muhlenberg School Board, wasting my money, and he ruled in favor of, not ruled in favor of, he just said if I'm going to continue and our group is going to continue, we must post a $500,000 bond, which I challenged. And I finally said, it was during the gas wars, I said, for you folks, if you want to find out more or get yourself some fuel, stop by the courthouse and get your supply of Hess gas. He didn't think it was funny. My attorney called me and said, he's going to sue you. I told him, hey, get me back on the stand. I wasn't done talking anyway. Okay. In fact, I put a letter to the editor out. I thought it'd be out today. It should be out in the next day or two, challenging another judge that stated, if you recall his letter, we should stop repeating what took place at 9/11 and all the carnage and just focus on just the heroes that stood up and did their job. And I said, no, we must remind people what these folks did. And that'll be in your letter. And I really challenged the Berks County judge on his position. But basically what I said, when Dwight Eisenhower told the photographers he wants everything recorded in the Holocaust, the same thing applies to 9/11. These young kids are not getting this information in school, and they're not studying history. Teachers probably don't even know history. And civics does not get taught to any degree. Consequently, it's up to us to remind folks that this cannot die. These killers need to be held accountable. So, anyway, having said that, my point in saying that is our speaker tonight not only is going to address the topic that we want to talk about tonight, which is the Second Amendment, but he's spoken to other groups, including the Sheriff's Brigade and the Oath Keepers, and not only on the Second Amendment, but he certainly represents at least my views on constitutional issues. And when he told me that he's interested in that judicial appointment, I said, that's one more time we can replace mediocrity with somebody that understands what that job's all about and what the Constitution's about. So I'm encouraging folks that when you hear him tonight, when he's through, if he's your guy, go back and see him. Sign his petition or volunteer to help, whatever you want to do. We're as an organization not endorsing people. We don't do that. But this is not a candidate running for office. This is looking for an appointment. And it's up to us to help you through the process, like I'm sure other candidates will probably want the job too, but were they ever here? Did they ever come here and talk to us or any other organizations? But anyway, the point is, he needs people to talk to our senators and tell them that we want to see Joshua Prince submitted onto the governor's desk for this appointment. And our Berks County reps, our senators, have the pull to get it done. And I can only remind you folks that the people I want you to contact by letter, by email, would be, of course, Senator Schwenk, Argel, and Rafferty are the three in Berks County. And then Fulmer used to be Berks, but still a good guy to get a hold of, and Muscola. Those are the key people. I expect, Sam, if I'm not mistaken, this will get on our mail list. You'll get all the information how to deal with this, including a sample letter you can use as a guide to put your own letter together. But however you do it, I encourage you to help get the legislative committee, get somebody in the judicial that we can call our friend. The same way we work to get politicians in Harrisburg. The judicial is just as important, as you well know, when the state Supreme Court ruled that pensions were legal, and I don't want to go through Article 2, Section 8 again, but they lied. And with that, I'll say thank you for the time.
Well, folks, Rod was on schedule starting out. We are all scheduled now, so Rod's reputation is in hand. Hi, folks. Our next speaker, Jim Smith, has a dual role tonight. How many of you know what today is? Raise your hand. Come on. Wow. September 17th is Constitution Day and Citizenship Day. So Jim's going to be talking about that a little bit, and then introduce our main speaker. Now, I'm going to cut this a little short. Jim is not feeling well, and he's still here, so I want to get him here and get him out as quick as possible so he doesn't spread the germs around. I do want to tell you that Jim has been a faithful supporter of the Berks County Patriots. Whenever we needed Jim, he was there for us. Jim, Berks County Patriots, thank you very, very much. When I was thinking of what to say about Jim, and by the way, there's a lot of things I could say, and they were favorable, Jim, honestly. I came across something that I thought was very appropriate for this evening. I'm going to paraphrase someone else that we know very well and hold in the highest esteem. The Honorable Sam Rohr. Sam had this to say about Jim Smith. Jim is one of the few people who possesses a significant knowledge of the Constitution and who shares my level of appreciation for liberty and individual God-given rights. Jim is a man of integrity and character. He understands that we live in a representative republic. He understands that rights come from God, not government, and that in our constitutional republic, our highest law is the Constitution. Amen to that, folks. Folks, I'm proud to introduce my friend Jim Smith.
I want to thank you for the opportunity this evening to celebrate the Constitution with you. I also want to take just a minute to thank so many of you as individuals who offered me and my family support during our most recent judicial campaign. We fell short by 139 votes out of 42,500 votes cast. And we did that spending half of what we believe that the winner spent. And I can't do that. No one can run a campaign like that without hands-on efforts of people like so many of you that contributed your time. And I would be amiss if I did not take a minute to thank you for your courage in standing out and helping us in that endeavor. I also want to take a minute to let you know that in all of the campaigns, the two campaigns that I've run for judge, I have not been at a Patriots meeting outside of the election cycle and found a judicial candidate here, except tonight. One of the individuals who won both the Republican nomination and the Democratic nomination, his name is Jim Lillis. And Jim Lillis is here tonight, standing in the back. Jim, would you raise your hand? Jim will be a judge of the Berks County Court of Common Pleas on January 1st. And I'm grateful that he's here tonight. I hope you are grateful that he's here tonight. And I would encourage you to take a minute to get to know him and introduce yourself before you leave this evening. The United States Constitution is great not because it's a list of rules. The United States Constitution is great because it is a compilation of beliefs that speak to eternal and unchanging truths about the human condition. Unchanging truths. I'll get to truths in maybe just a minute. Unchanging. You know, the Constitution in Article 5 allows for an amendment process. And what we've seen recently in America is a sea change. That word isn't mine. That word comes from many opinions from the federal judges who want to adopt laws that are not found in the Constitution. They recognize that what they're doing represents a sea change supported by new societal norms. sea changes to holdings that have no textual foundation in the Constitution, based on new societal norms. I ask you, who is better to determine what societal norms are? What new societal norms we're facing? Is it a federally appointed for life, unelected judge? Or is it you and me through our duly elected state representatives, federal representatives? And so this unchanging truths, unchanging nature of these truths, I believe our founders anticipated, they understood and appreciated that what they were writing about, these truths about government, would last forever, as long as we abided the amendment procedure, which I suggest is a thing of yesteryear or yesterdecade. Truths. In 2013, I ran for judge, and I like telling this story. At the time, I didn't like living it, but I like telling this because it shows a little bit about the mindset of most attorneys and most jurists. In 2013, I ran for judge, and I had an opportunity, along with one other candidate, to address the Berks County Tea Party. It was in March 2013, and they had given us each about 3 or 4 minutes to tell a little bit about ourselves, and I explained to the party there that unlike so many students today who apply to 5, 10, 15 different universities and pick the best one that suits their needs, I chose to apply to one university, Liberty University. I then did the same thing with law school. I chose to apply to and went to Regent University School of Law because I understood that both of these schools understood and appreciated what the laws of nature and nature's God means as a foundation to our legal system. Now at that meeting, there happened to be a reporter with the Reading Eagle. It wasn't Dave Meikle. Dave Meikle's in the back, and Dave Meikle's a great reporter. I'm looking forward to reading the article tomorrow, Dave. Give Dave a round of applause, because I'll tell you what. He is your voice to the rest of Berks County tomorrow morning. And how you're interpreted by the rest of Berks County depends in part on how well a job he does. And Dave is one of the best the Reading Eagle has. But another reporter was there. Another reporter was there at the Tea Party meeting, and the reporter wrote that Jim bases his entire platform on the laws of nature and nature's God. Within 24 hours, I received 2 emails and 1 text message from local, prominent, successful, well-respected attorneys in Berks County. One of them said, "Please tell me you were misquoted." A text message said, "You must have been misquoted, and lay off the Godspeak, you're putting people off." And the third was the most entertaining. The third was an email, and it said, "Either you're running for an ecclesiastical court, or you don't understand the doctrine of separation of church and state. Either one I find offensive. Please explain your position." And I replied courteously to all 3 of them. Only one of them replied back with a yikes. But I replied courteously to 3 of them to explain that the quote, "the laws of nature and nature's God" wasn't mine, but instead comes directly from the Declaration of Independence. Indeed, is the second line of the Declaration, it's the first sentence of the Declaration, and sets the tone for the rest of the document, and I dare say, the Constitution and the founding document of our nation. Lawyers, too many lawyers, don't recognize the phrase. And if they don't recognize it, you know they don't understand it. And this isn't because they've got this design to undermine liberty and essential freedoms. It's because law schools today aren't teaching it. Which is exactly my point at the Tea Party meeting. The laws of nature and nature's God. It's not an accident that those words, those specific words, ended up in the second line of the Declaration. The laws of nature, it wasn't something new in the 18th century. The Greeks and the Romans had their version of what they call the laws of nature. It was what's on man's heart from the beginning. We know certain things to be right and wrong. The difference in the 18th century was that we had the benefit of Edward Koch and William Blackstone and writers like them, who said that the laws of nature were implanted on our hearts by our Creator. And the laws of nature's God were intended by Jefferson to distinguish us from the Romans and the Greeks, adopting expressly the language offered by William Blackstone, only 10 years earlier or so. So the laws of nature and nature's God were no accident. Law schools aren't teaching it. And is it any surprise that where we find ourselves today? I had occasion to speak not too long ago at a church. And I explained to the parishioners at the church that there are certain physical laws of the universe that we all agree on. Gravity, the laws of motion. I can't recite them for you, it's been a while, but I know there's 3 of them. And by these physical laws of the universe, we dare not avoid, we dare not walk away because we know that they're true. And I submit that there are eternal truths, eternal laws about the universe that we all in our hearts deeply understand, if we're honest with ourselves, exist. And that we as a nation, when we live by these laws, we'll live. When we abide by these rules, we live. When we don't, it's no different than walking off a roof and expecting that the laws of gravity aren't going to apply to you today because they're uncomfortable or politically incorrect or difficult. And so I submit that where we find ourselves today is with a host of law schools that aren't teaching the truth because it's uncomfortable, because it's difficult, or because it's politically incorrect. What can we do? And I'll close with this, and then I have the great privilege of introducing your real speaker tonight. What can you do? Let me encourage you. Within this room, there may be, what do you think, 300 people? Of the 300 people that are in this room, you know individuals, neighbors, young people in whose life you've invested time and energy, nephews, nieces, sons, daughters, grandchildren, who are intelligent, who care about where we are as a society. We need lawyers who understand the fundamental principles that have made America exceptional. And I would encourage you, have them call me. I'll buy anybody lunch that's thinking about going to law school and shares a worldview with me. Encourage them to take the deep step into the practice of law with the commitment to live up to the ideals that our founders set before us. So with that, I have the great privilege of introducing your speaker tonight. And I am so thankful to Sam and Linda for asking me to take this opportunity. A couple of years ago, and I'm not even sure where it was that I first met Josh Prince, but I was so impressed with his knowledge and understanding of firearms law that I began to reach out to him when I had questions. What I found out very quickly was that most lawyers that know Josh in Berks County and beyond will consider Josh Prince their go-to guy for gun law questions. There is no better, in my opinion, no better attorney that understands and appreciates the Second Amendment in Eastern Pennsylvania, if not the East Coast, than Josh Prince. And I'm thrilled to introduce you to him and welcome him to the stage tonight. Thank you very much.
How's everyone doing tonight? That's a really tough act to follow. I mean, Jim and his constitutional beliefs are so right. There's is no better word to use. Our fundamental rights are eroding at such a fast pace. And it's extremely alarming to me. There are so many individuals that say that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. And there is one simple question you can pose to them that I have yet to find any able to answer. And that is quite simply, if our founding fathers intended the Constitution to be a living, breathing document, why did they include an amendment process? It's unneeded. It would simply evolve. So we know what the intent of our founding fathers was. The intent was not judicial activism. It was not the courts coming in to define something that the public desired, but which the majority would not approve. Everyone knows how difficult it is to pass an amendment to the Constitution. That was on purpose. That was to ensure our democracy, which is actually a republic. Few understand the difference, but a republic is there to protect the minorities and those who, in some occasions, are the few. And that's today where we find ourselves. Those of us who believe that the Bill of Rights was not a listing of rights that the government was bestowing upon us, but rather a listing of inalienable rights that come from a higher power. Whatever that higher power is to you, is to you. But they are not rights that the government can take away. And in this vein, I recently was requested to write a law review article that will be published in the next couple months out of the St. Thomas Law Review on the inalienable right to self-defense. And it's quite interesting if you actually take the time to research the history of self-defense, going back to Blackstone and Locke. Back then, this idea of a duty to retreat was taken, modified, and adapted by the progressives to suggest that it isn't actually an inalienable right, but rather that everyone has a duty to retreat. When we actually look at what Locke and Blackstone wrote, they actually supported the fact that you were almost always entitled to use lethal force. The one exception, and where the duty to retreat comes from, is where you cause the altercation. So let me give you an example that Blackstone gave. If you would be in a saloon or an establishment serving some libations, and you would start a scuffle with someone, that person started to use force against you, you were not entitled to use lethal force against that person. You had to, as he would say, retreat to the wall, meaning you had to exclude yourself to the extent possible out of the situation. But Blackstone would continue on, that if you retreat to the wall and that person continues to come after you, even though you started the altercation, at that point you had the lawful right to use lethal force. Another example Blackstone would give would be if you're walking down a weapon, they just jump out of a bush at you. Blackstone said you had an immediate right to use lethal force because they could intend you no goodwill. There has never in our society been this duty to retreat where you are an innocent victim. Yet our laws are so complex and so compounded on this right and duty to have to retreat that it's absurd. Many of you probably know that in 2011, Pennsylvania changed our laws in regards to whether or not we had a duty to retreat. And while there are certain occasions where one still does have a duty to retreat in the Commonwealth, generally we now have what we call a stand your ground doctrine, where you do not have to retreat when someone intends you or another person serious bodily harm or death. But they must have a weapon that's capable of inflicting serious bodily harm or death. To Blackstone and Locke, that was not required at all. So we still have very far to come from where we've begun. And it's quite unfortunate. The laws here in Pennsylvania are so complex that I conduct firearms law seminars where we review both the state and federal firearms laws. They generally are 4-hour seminars. When I start the seminar, I tell everyone in the room, I bet you're thinking right now, there is no way possible I could talk for 4 hours straight about the firearms laws in this Commonwealth, and yet we will get to the 4-hour mark, and I still will not be through all the course materials. That's how complex the right to keep and bear arms that shall not be infringed has become. I was actually speaking with an individual earlier tonight who came up to me and said, there's a question that I've never heard an attorney answer. I've never heard anyone actually answer. And that is, pursuant to the Second Amendment, how do we prohibit felons, the mentally ill, and those individuals? And I said, quite honestly, if you read the Second Amendment, and you're a strict constructionist, there is not a way to prohibit those individuals. And many people are taken back by that. But that's what the Constitution provides. If you don't like it, there's an amendment process. Many would probably support that under certain limits and restrictions. But that is why we have that amendment process. It is not for the courts to come in and say that we read shall not infringe to be reasonable restriction is okay. And we have seen this time in and time again. Many of you are probably familiar with the Heller decision, which came out in 2008 by the Supreme Court. It was the first time that the U.S. Supreme Court found that the Second Amendment was an individual right. It's very interesting how attorneys gloss over many of the key aspects of that case. And I want to share one of those key aspects with you tonight. Everyone looks at Heller as saying you have an individual right to keep and bear arms. But, as the court states in the decision, nothing shall cast doubt on the fact that those laws that currently exist prohibiting felons and the mentally ill are lawful. The aspect that I want to draw your attention to is the court took time to define what constitutes keep and bear arms. Does anyone know what the court defined as the right to keep and bear arms? It was actually quite interesting. The court said the right of the person to keep a firearm in his clothing or in his pocket for, in essence, defensive purposes. Let that sink in. The court already held under the Second Amendment that you had a right to keep a firearm concealed on your person. Last I checked, a fundamental right cannot be licensed. Now, being an attorney who's actually argued this issue before the Commonwealth Court, all the judges' heads kind of just spun around when I argued it. It's disconcerting that we do have many on the judiciary who won't look at the exact words that the Supreme Court declared. This is but one of the issues that comes out of Heller. And there are a multitude of other ones. And that's why it is as lengthy as it is. Now, I know on the agenda tonight, we're going to talk about some other issues, some of the pending bills, some of the issues with municipalities that are violating state preemption. And we are. But before we get there, everyone needs to understand that it all starts with the Second Amendment, as well as here in Pennsylvania, Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. In fact, the Commonwealth Court, in a decision, stated while the Second Amendment only recently was acknowledged to be an individual right, here in the Commonwealth, we've never questioned it. That's strong words for the same court that would come out and say that it's acceptable to license the carrying of a firearm for your own protection. Every one of us is responsible for those decisions, because every one of us has the distinct honor and privilege of voting for our judges here in the Commonwealth. Never take that for granted. With many of the bills that are currently pending, I know one of the ones that I was asked to discuss was House Bill 357, aptly named. There, Metcalf proposed a bill that was, in essence, federal firearms nullification. Any law, federal law passed after January 1st, 2013 would be null and void here in the Commonwealth. While there are a number of other states that have passed similar bills, at this point in time, there have not been any federal challenges to whether or not those are constitutional. But given my experience, especially given the federal judiciary, you can pretty much expect that they will ignore the 10th Amendment and they will find that those bills are unconstitutional that were passed by the states, reserving their rights to define what constitutes the right to keep and bear arms that has not been otherwise limited to the U.S. Constitution. Unfortunately, as several of the speakers tonight mentioned, with Wolf in office, I cannot say that I see any pro-Second Amendment bills passing and being signed into law. Some of the bills, there are some questions as to whether there is enough votes for an override. At this point, it seems too early to tell. There are a number of very pro-Second Amendment bills that are pending in the House and Senate. And it's on us to get those passed. It's on us to let our elected representatives know how we feel. Let them know that we elected them. This is an issue that's important to me, and I want to see you move forward with this. Because if you tell me you're not willing to support it, then I have some decisions to make when it comes election time. We have the power of the vote. And unfortunately, too few individuals recognize the power of the right to vote. Everyone says my vote doesn't count. That's unfortunate. There was a constable race in Reading. Do you know how many votes the winner won by? One vote. One vote. One person hadn't come out that day, it would have been a tie vote. Two people didn't come out, would have went the other way. You still think your vote doesn't count? You need to remember that. And I realize that I'm talking on issues beyond just simply the Second Amendment, but these are so important. These go to the heart of the Second Amendment because we need to have our voice heard. One of the other topics they asked me to address is the pending litigation regarding a plethora of different municipalities that have violated state preemption. For those of you who don't know what that means, basically in our statutes, it states that no county or municipality may regulate in any manner the possession, transfer, carrying, and a number of other things of firearms and ammunition. Many different municipalities regulate it. They say, oh, you can't have guns in our borough buildings. You can't have guns in the park. You can't have guns here or there. I have litigated a number of those cases. The most recent case prior to a recent enactment by the General Assembly was in 2013 up in Erie, Pennsylvania. The case was Justin Dillon versus the City of Erie. There, Mr. Dillon had held a number of pro-Second Amendment rallies at the park. This time, he applied for a permit, as he always did, even though he didn't need it. And for whatever reason, the city solicitor said, well, we'll let you have your rally, but you can't have any guns there. He said, it's a pro-Second Amendment rally. Well, we have this ordinance from 1962 that says that there's to be no firearms in city parks. So he contacted me, and thankfully through the help of the NRA, we were able to mount a defense. The ordinance at issue specifically said the individuals shall not possess a firearm. The statute, as I said before, says no municipality may regulate, among other things, the possession of a firearm. We went into the Court of Common Pleas and were heard by the president judge there on an emergency injunction motion. The judge would deny the emergency motion and would say that the ordinance did not violate the state preemption code. He would leave out key words to the ordinance that were found in the statute. That case would go up on appeal to the Commonwealth Court, where the Commonwealth Court would once again say, we have told you time and time again you may not regulate firearms or ammunition in any manner, and you continue to do it. Unfortunately for my client, because of the denial of the injunction, and because of the time frame it takes for the Commonwealth Court to hear a matter, he still held the rally. 8 individuals, including himself, were charged criminally with violating this ordinance. I represented them at the magisterial district judge level when the charges were filed. At that hearing, not one police officer could testify that any of these cited individuals actually had a firearm. They said we saw things that looked like firearms, slung over their shoulder or in the holster of that, but we never checked to see if they actually were. They couldn't tell if there was any serial numbers on any of the items. They couldn't tell anything about it. And in fact, even more telling, as the solicitor was representing the city in this matter, they didn't even submit a copy of the ordinance at issue. They didn't even meet their burden. They couldn't even establish that there was any violation. Yet, I bet everyone here knows what the outcome was. That judge found all 8 guilty of violating the ordinance. That would also result in an appeal, this time now up to the Common Pleas level. But the case was already at the Commonwealth Court in the civil context. The Common Pleas judge that heard the criminal matter said she was staying the matter because she had grave concerns over the statutory preemption and the fact that the Commonwealth Court was already hearing the civil aspects of the case. As I alluded to earlier, the Commonwealth Court would say, this is unlawful. You can't do this. We have cases back to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in Commonwealth v. Ortiz, where the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, not only are you proscribed from being able to regulate firearms and ammunition under our statutory preemption code, you're also precluded under Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. But that didn't stop those judges from prosecuting my clients. Thankfully, when the Commonwealth Court came down with that decision, the Common Pleas judge dismissed all the charges. It's a misdemeanor of the first degree for any municipality to violate that statutory preemption. We have a decision from the Commonwealth Court stating that the city had violated statutory preemption. How many of you here think that the district attorney brought charges against those city officials that were responsible for the charging and prosecution of my client. That's right, none. That's the problem with our system. This would happen again, but this time it was after what was called Act 192 was passed by the General Assembly. The General Assembly became aware of Mr. Dillon's plight up in Erie and said, we've had enough of this. We've already criminalized it. District attorneys won't prosecute it. What more can we do to make clear to you that you cannot regulate firearms and ammunition? So the General Assembly passes a provision providing for attorney's fees and costs. Oh yeah, that's an aspect I left out. My client who was prosecuted there, even after the Commonwealth Court came down and said it was unlawful, he had no right to get his attorney's fees and costs back. As I said, thankfully the NRA had stepped in. But other than that, he would have been out everything. So the General Assembly said, we have enough of this. They provided a number of provisions and changes, including what we'll call enhanced standing. So someone didn't need to be prosecuted in order to challenge the statute. That would later be challenged by certain individuals in the General Assembly. And the Commonwealth Court would say that that amendment that was passed unconstitutionally. Now that case has been appealed up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and I believe briefs for the Commonwealth are due by the 28th of this month. Meanwhile, there were a whole bunch of municipalities that were violating these provisions. Before Act 192 went into effect, my office went and sent out over 200 letters to different municipalities that were violating the Act. And we said, look, this has been passed, you're going to have liability, we're not looking for you to simply pass it on to your taxpayers. All we're asking is that you repeal your illegal ordinances. I would say approximately 80% of them ended up doing that once they got our letters in that. There was a number of other ones that didn't. One of those was the city of Harrisburg. Yeah. There's a wonder. And there were issues there. There was another law firm in the Harrisburg area that was quite clear. Actually, in their announcement that they were filing an action, said they just needed to be the first to file. And in being the first to file, they failed to bring a number of counts. They didn't bring arguments under Article 1, Section 21. They didn't bring arguments under the Second Amendment. They just wanted to get their payday under Act 192 and never saw, even though there was already a challenge pending to the constitutionality, that it would be ruled unconstitutional. We would also file an action shortly thereafter to make sure that all the issues were preserved. Our case, because we included Second Amendment issues, was later removed to the federal court, where the federal court has now sat on that case for 10 months, doing nothing. The state case proceeded forward with that other law firm, and a preliminary injunction was issued in relation to several of the ordinances. So that seems good. The city appeals. And during the appeal process, it becomes known that the Commonwealth Court ruled that Act 192 is unconstitutional. Their payday just left. And I saw the writing on the wall. Because now, all the time they expend, they're not going to recoup. I was contacted by a number of members of the General Assembly, a number of members from this county and throughout the Commonwealth. And they said, we want to fight this. We want to file what's called an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief. When everything was said and done, the brief that the General Assembly would submit under my signature was 192 pages. Now that does include some appendices. The brief that the law firm in Harrisburg would submit I believe was a total of 12 pages, of which the argument section was a whole 4 pages. That case is still pending. We're waiting to hear whether oral argument's going to be granted. But that's one of the big issues. Sometimes, unfortunately, people get involved in an issue for the wrong reasons, and then we can have very bad case law that results. So, at this point, we are now waiting to hear from the Commonwealth Court as to whether it's going to schedule oral argument, and if it does, what parties it wants to argue there. I'm hoping that the Commonwealth Court, seeing the amicus brief that was submitted, will ask me to be there to present, because I am concerned whether the other law firm is totally prepared to litigate in oral argument the issues that we raised. It's disconcerting, to say the least. Nevertheless, Act 192, even if the PA Supreme Court ultimately rules it unconstitutional, has given individuals throughout the Commonwealth a great benefit, as we have successfully had repeal, as I said, of about 80% of the municipalities that did have illegal ordinances on the book. So there won't be another individual like my client Justin Dillon who's going to be unlawfully prosecuted in one of those municipalities for an ordinance that's illegal. Yet, to this day, there is not one district attorney throughout the Commonwealth that has ever prosecuted any municipality or any of their officials for violating the statutory preemption code. I can say that in Lehigh, District Attorney Martin made clear to the council after Act 192 was struck down and they were thinking that they would possibly reenact the ordinances that they had repealed, that if they were going to consider that, he would welcome an opportunity to be at the hearing where they would so consider it. After that point, nothing more was heard of the subject. That's the power of a district attorney who's going to see the laws applied to everyone equally. And that's one of the overarching issues that we face today, that unfortunately too many elected officials are believed to be above the law. They're not. We are all equals. The law applies to all of us equally. And this may surprise some of you. The other day, I was at an event where an individual came up to me and said, you know, a lot of judges carry while they're on the bench. I said, yeah, it's illegal. He says, what do you mean? You pro-Second Amendment. How can you say that? He said, the statutes are clear. There is no exception for a judge to be able to carry on the bench, as much as I'd like to see it. The law is what the law is. There is not an exception in the courthouse for judges. Oh, but they passed a policy. That's nice. Last I checked, General Assembly is the one who passes the laws, and no one is above the law. This individual was absolutely taken aback that I take that position. And I said, if we're going to start picking and choosing what laws apply to what elected officials, we got real problems, because we're already there. If you don't like what the law says, like everyone else, petition your representatives and have it changed. That's the right that we, the citizens, have. Now, I know I've been talking for a while. I'm not sure if I'm even probably over the time period. Well, I don't want to... All right, I'm going to end with this, and then I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone may have. Whenever I give a presentation, I tell everyone, if there's one piece of advice that you take away tonight from my presentation, go out and get a license to carry firearms if you don't have one. Our laws are extremely complex. There are a number of reasons why any individual should have a license to carry firearms, and they don't even touch on if you actually want to conceal carry a firearm. There are there is a whole section, approximately 20 different paragraphs that are exempted if you have a license to carry firearms in regards to transporting firearms. And you may say, well, this will never happen. We had a case up north where an individual who did not have a license to carry firearms had all of his firearms loaded in his truck, was on his way out to the range. Gets a call from a very close family friend. She was the victim of domestic violence. She needs help. He says, I'll be right over, I'll pick you right up. She called and the police were called, but they weren't there. You know the old adage when, seconds count, police are only 30 minutes away. So he goes over immediately. She gets in. Just about the time she gets in, the police come. So of course he pulls over. Police officer comes up. Famous first question, is there anything I should know about? Well, he says, yeah, officer, I have a whole bunch of firearms in the vehicle. I was going to the range. I got this call. I wanted to help her out. I came over immediately. He goes, oh, do you have a license to carry firearms? Well, no. All right, I'm charging you for violating Pennsylvania's transportation laws. Luckily, in this situation, the case went before a magisterial district judge who said, this is so obscene that you are actually going to try and charge this individual for not having a license to carry because he made a side trip to pick up this individual who was in distress, that it won't happen in my courtroom. And he threw out the charges. The exact opposite happened in Philadelphia. Individual coming back, stopped at CVS. On his way home, stopped at CVS to pick up his prescription. Firearm and ammunition were in separate compartments in his trunk. No dispute by the police on that. He didn't have a license to carry. He had his empty holster on his hip. When he went in and the technician saw the empty holster, she called the police because he had an empty holster. All the squad, I mean, this was apparently like a movie. He comes out into the parking lot, and you got squad cars flying up, screeching on the brakes, everyone jumping out. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? He says, what are you talking about? Where's the gun? You got a gun on you. He says, no, the gun and ammunition are in separate compartments in the trunk. Police officer verifies it, yep. Do you have a license to carry? Well, no. Okay, then I'm charging you because you just violated the transportation laws. He was successfully prosecuted. So, with that being said, as I said, that is one of the reasons I tell everyone to go out and get a license to carry firearms. It's $20 for 5 years. And for those of you who are worried about your information being disclosed, Pennsylvania's got your back covered. Not only is it a felony for any individual to disclose license to carry firearms applicant information, but it is additionally a civil violation. There is a statutory provision that if you can't show actual damages, you're entitled to $1,000 plus attorney's fees and costs. If you can show actual damages, like maybe you lose your job as a result, you're entitled to 3 times your actual damages plus attorney's fees and costs. Some of you may, in the very near future, see some articles regarding this in regards to Monroe County. Last week, we filed a class action lawsuit against Monroe County because they have been disclosing confidential license to carry firearms applicant information, as well as requiring all sorts of unlawful information from their applicants. Their applicants have to submit their tax returns. If you're on Social Security disability, you have to submit your medical records. So one of the reporters for last night caught on to the case, even though I filed it as John and Jane Doe's and filed a motion to seal it. Because of the sheer number, we're looking at somewhere probably around 15,000 licensed to carry firearms applicants whose information has been disclosed. It's in excess of about $40 million because it's each individual. So to the extent you have multiple individuals involved in the disclosure, each one is individually liable for that $1,000. So I know KYW apparently picked up on it today, as well as some other local newspapers up in the Pocono region. So just be aware of that. I know some people have been alarmed and worried about that, but I can tell you it's not an issue that generally you should be aware of. And I know the PA Sheriff's Association is well aware of it and informs all of their sheriffs to maintain the confidentiality of the license to carry firearms applicant information. So with that being said, it's been a pleasure being here, but I'm not leaving. If any of you have questions, I'm happy to take those questions now.
Anybody have any questions right now? Raise your hand.
Let's play Stump the Chum.
My first question is, are you allowed to carry in plain sight?
Okay, so we typically call that open carry. That would be what I'm doing here. And I usually do that during presentation in case people have questions. In Pennsylvania, it is completely legal to open carry. We have even case law from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saying that yes, it is completely lawful to open carry. And usually the next question that comes with that is that when I got my license to carry firearms, I was told that I lose the right to open carry. That is not the case. You, as I said, because of the transportation laws, should always have a license to carry regardless, and you can continue to open carry after you have a license to carry firearms. So yes, it is completely lawful. The only exception to that rule is with regards to the city of Philadelphia. If you do not have a license to carry firearms, you are ineligible to open carry in Philadelphia. Again, just get the license to carry. It's good for 5 years, 20 bucks. It's another form of state-issued ID. This is a little side, quick story, but I had a friend of mine who got to the airport, found out his driver's license had expired, asked the TSA agent, and I would not advise any of you to do this, but asked the TSA agent what other forms of ID could they accept. She said, oh, I need picture ID. He says, all I have is my license to carry. She was a good TSA agent, said, well, hand it over here, swiped it through the skip. Yep, good, you can board the plane. That, he got lucky there. And he did not get a physical examination by TSA. Yeah. So what other questions do we have?
Hi, my name is John Ide. I'm from Perry Township. Will you define illegal firearm? Is there such a thing?
Well, under the statute, there is no specific meaning to an illegal firearm. There is no definition. I don't even believe I can think of any part in the Uniform Firearms Act where those words come together.
Because just about every day in the Reading Eagle, I read an article where somebody got arrested and he was charged, among other things, with possessing an illegal firearm.
Yeah,
That's just about every day in the Reading Eagle. I got into not really an argument with a deputy sheriff several years ago and about that. And he told me that the gun he possessed was stolen. Therefore, it was an illegal firearm. I tried to tell him that he was illegally possessing a firearm, and this deputy just wouldn't give up.
correct. I agree with that analysis. Unfortunately, that is an issue. It's also similar in nature to how whenever we have a shooting, it's always a machine gun or a fully automatic weapon. Some assault rifle is the favored term, especially when assault rifle, if you actually look for the definition, means a select fire weapon, meaning it must be able to fire fully automatic. And the weapons that are used are generally not. In fact, as I love what are called National Firearms Act weapons that include machine guns, silencers, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, and that, they are completely legal to own here in the Commonwealth. You need to go through the process with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. But there has never been a crime committed with a legally owned machine gun. I know that may blow you away, but there has never been in the history of the United States a crime committed with a legally owned machine gun. Yes, sir?
In the case of Justin Dillon versus Erie, he said, all charges against him were dropped. And The DAs did nothing to prosecute the people that came and tried to take away his fundamental rights. One of the things that I find frustrating is they come for our fundamental right, they get denied it, and they just walk away. And we're left with the potential consequence of losing that fundamental right. Correct. Is there anything that can be done civilly? Sue these boards, these people individually, I mean, bring lawsuits down on them to set a precedent that if you come after our rights, we'll sue you for a couple of million and lay you hurt.
To answer your question, yes, and that was the main goal of Act 192. It was to put that leverage in place where if you're going to pass these illegal ordinances that we've told you time and time again you can't, we're going to allow the plaintiff in those actions to get attorney's fees and costs, and we really don't care how much it costs you. Now, obviously the concern on my part is I'm cognizant of the fact that if your municipality gets tagged with a $30,000 or $40 million lawsuit, guess who's going to pay for that? The taxpayers. One way or another, and some will say, well, they have insurance. Well, have you ever gotten into a car accident and seen if your insurance rates go up the next year? It's going to be the same way. So, yes, there are ways, but the problem is generally in the civil context, the remedy is money that ends up coming out of your own pocket. And I think what needs to happen is they need to start allowing for individuals who violate the law in that fashion to be held individually responsible, where the money has to come out of their pocket. Of course, good luck trying to collect on that, and then we have, you know, certain issues if the person's married with joint assets and things like that, but that would be one way. The other way to respond to your question is that federally, there is a mechanism that we commonly refer to it as a 1983 action. It comes under 42 U.S.C. 1983. That's a civil rights deprivation action where you can bring a claim that your civil liberties are being violated, and if you're successful, you're entitled to your attorney's fees and costs plus whatever the jury may award you. The problem that arises with many civil rights violations is determining any type of value, and it's left up to a jury. And I say this with hesitation, but unfortunately the truth of the matter is most people who we would want to be on the jury have figured out how to get out of being on jury duty. That's part of the issue. I always welcome the opportunity to be on a jury. I'd love it. They won't select me though because I'm an attorney. I've been called a couple times, but some of the excuses I've seen people give that it's clear that they're just trying to get out of jury duty. In fact, the first one that comes to mind, there was this young lady who was there, and the judge asked if they thought they had any type of conflicts that would prevent them from being able to be unbiased, and she said, well, I'm married to a police officer. And the judge said, okay, what does that mean? Well, anything a law enforcement officer tells me is the truth. And the judge said, so let me understand this. If we have testimony that the officer lied, she cuts him off. She cuts him off. She says, he's telling the truth. It doesn't matter if someone else says he lied, and we have proof of it. There you could see that it was someone who was specifically trying to get out of jury duty. So that's the biggest problem with 1983 actions, that, you know, establishing those damages in that becomes very problematic.
Fred Zancraft, thank you for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
As far as open carry, is it not true if you do not have a license to carry and you put on a shirt or a jacket over that weapon, you're in violation?
Yes. Yes. With Virginia law that says that if you're in a vehicle and the firearm can be visible, seen while you're in that vehicle, that's open carry, you don't need a license. Here in Pennsylvania, when you're in any mode of conveyance, you must have a license to carry firearms. So if you're on your tractor, your bicycle, a moped, a car, anything like that, any mode of transportation, you must have a license to carry. Now here is one of the issues where our General Assembly messed up big time. I used to joke around when House Bill 40 came out, which was our stand your ground doctrine in 2011, because it changed the definition of vehicle and changed it to any mode of transportation or conveyance. And that, you know, if my buddy put me into a wheelbarrow and started pushing me around, I'm in a mode of conveyance, which is true. And I started thinking about this more. What about every individual that's in a wheelchair? Guess what? They're in a mode of conveyance. For them to ever possess a loaded handgun, they must have a license to carry firearms. Worse than that, even with a license to carry firearms, you can never have a loaded rifle or shotgun in your car. The reason for that is they believe that if we have a loaded rifle or shotgun in the car, we'll have to poach Bambi. True, that's what the reasoning is. So now let's take that to the next level. That's a mode of conveyance. You can never have a loaded rifle or shotgun in any mode of conveyance. That means that someone who is in a wheelchair can never shoot a rifle or shotgun. That's the unintended consequences when we don't think through the interplay of the different laws. I don't see how that could sustain any type of challenge. I think there's all sorts of issues from the Americans with Disabilities Act to the Second Amendment to everything in between. But standing here today, the DA could charge. Other questions?
Ray Bosford, is there any way that a state trooper, if I got stopped on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, could look at my driver's license and say I have a permit to carry?
By looking at your driver's license or running just merely your license plate, no. However, there is an offline database that is maintained of all individuals who have a license to carry firearms that officer, that trooper can call into or request over the radio be called into and inquired of as to whether that individual has a license to carry firearms.
So there's no tie-in between your license and your...
There is not. There's a separate offline database, like I said, that they can query, but it is not linked to your driver's license or your license plate or your registration.
Hi, Jim Billman. Question. Deborah and I travel in an RV a lot, and I do carry a loaded rifle, a loaded shotgun, maybe 5 loaded pistols, but that is our home. We live in it. Does that not constitute a home and we can actually have it in there?
This is an issue that I've talked about and thought would be an interesting court challenge. However, no one ever wants to be the guinea pig, especially with their Second Amendment rights potentially being on the line. I can say with regards to having a loaded rifle or a shotgun, the grading for the offense is a summary, so it's akin to a traffic ticket, so we're not talking about anything major. But when we start talking about a loaded handgun in that, we're back to talking about misdemeanor of the first degree potentially, or higher charges. And here in the Commonwealth, with one exception, if you are ever convicted of a misdemeanor of the first degree, or anything higher, which would be any felony, you are going to be at a minimum federally prohibited for the remainder of your life from being able to own, possess, or use firearms and ammunition.
Well, one more question about that. Since we live in the RV at times, is that not our home and they would need a search warrant to come in? I mean, we actually live in it. It's our home. We live there.
Last time I checked, you need a search warrant to come in a car. Of course, our Supreme Court has taken out some exceptions to that and has found if there's reasonable suspicion, you can challenge that later on. I'm still baffled by why it is so difficult to get a warrant if you have reasonable suspicion. MPJs are available 24/7, 365, and judges give out warrants like they're pets. So I'm not really sure why there is this need to violate the Fourth Amendment and allow searches absent a warrant. But that's my own personal opinion.
This will be the last question. Josh is not leaving. Questions that we didn't get around to, I'm sure he'll entertain those in the back.
Absolutely.
State law is apparently ambiguous regarding whether you can carry a firearm on school property. Do you know whether any effort is being made to clarify that?
Yeah, my office actually just handled a matter in a different county where the police chief and the district attorney today have decided not to prosecute an individual who had a firearm on school property. Generally, the law provides that it's unlawful to have a firearm on school property. However, there is an exception, actually a defense, that among other things, the firearm is possessed for lawful purposes. Well, last time I checked, our laws define what is unlawful. So if you aren't there for an unlawful purpose, then your purpose must be lawful. Additionally, and I say that seriously. Obviously, if you're on the school property there to commit a crime, if you're going to harm someone, you're there unlawfully. But if you're there picking up your child and you have no ill will, you're not there to harm anyone, I fail to see how you're not there unlawfully. Now, if you don't have a license to carry firearms and you have a loaded handgun in your vehicle, well, then you're unlawful. But if you have that license to carry, that provides you with the right to be able to carry a firearm on that school property. The interesting aspect to that, and it ties back to the issue I started out with about judges that carry on the bench, there's no exception for law enforcement officers to have a firearm on school property. No one. If we're going to read the statute that strictly and say that other lawful purposes is some unknown thing that isn't whatever isn't unlawful, I don't know how to define it. And it lacks all common sense. The intent was to ensure that individuals who come on school property with an intent to harm people could be prosecuted, not those who are legally carrying. And if you actually look at the licensing statute to obtain a license to carry, it says that many of the bases for obtaining a license to carry include self-defense. So the law already acknowledges that a lawful purpose is self-defense, and most people who get a license to carry for self-defense. I don't see how it doesn't apply. Unfortunately, we do not have any case law on that. There have been a number of occasions where people have been prosecuted and been offered ARD, accelerated rehabilitative disposition, and that does not constitute a conviction. And generally, they have taken ARD because if they were convicted of the crime and it was upheld, they would be looking at a misdemeanor of the first degree that would forever prohibit them from being able to own and possess firearms and ammunition. The General Assembly is aware of it. There have been some attempts to define other lawful purpose in other bills, but as we sit here tonight, unfortunately, nothing has been so passed. So it remains out there simply as what the statute says, that it's a defense for other lawful purpose.
Josh, we're going to have one final open floor question.
Thanks, Josh. The PA firearms laws states that you need a license to carry in case an emergency is declared. Take your firearms with you. Well, what happens if you have to evacuate north or east and you get to the state line, say New York or New Jersey? What happens then? And then what would be the difference if the federal government declares a state of emergency and the 10 governors of states kick in?
That's a loaded question, and you just asked about 2 communist states. They caused me great consternation. To answer your question, quite honestly, although there exists the federal law that allows for the transport of firearms through states that would otherwise prohibit it, it can't be an end destination for you, and you must have the firearm and ammunition kept in separate compartments. So if, God forbid, you found yourself in a situation where you had to leave Pennsylvania because of some sort of natural disaster, and you were going to have to go through New York, my best advice to you is to keep traveling through New York. Do not stop there for any reason. There was a case several years back, I believe it was 2009, Rocco versus the Port Authority, where an individual was on a plane that had problems and had to land in New York because of the problems. And they couldn't get the plane fixed, So they told him all, get your luggage, go to a hotel, come back the next day. He gets his guns and his luggage. He comes back to check his guns and luggage, and the Port Authority says, where's your pistol permit? He says, what are you talking about, pistol permit? I'm flying from, Washington State. We don't need any pistol permit. Oh, but you're in New York, you do. He says, well, my plane, it has technical problems. What am I supposed to do? Oh, well, you should have never taken the firearms from TSA. Because you took them and are now bringing them back, you need a pistol permit. He was prosecuted criminally. The charges were thrown out. He then filed a 1983 civil rights action, and the Liberal New York court found that his civil rights were not violated, and that the intent of the intrastate transport of firearms was for you to go continuously through it. If you make any type of side trip, that's now your end destination, and that he should have never taken possession of the firearms from TSA, not that anyone ever told him that. So it is extremely problematic, and I don't know what the answer is. I do know that there have been bills presented in the federal government, the House of Representatives, that would enhance our federal transportation law to stop this nonsense, because we are seeing it. And it goes even farther than that. There's also a Law Enforcement Protection Act that allows retired law enforcement, if they qualify, to be able to carry a gun throughout the United States. There are a number of retired law enforcement officers that have been prosecuted in New Jersey and New York, even though they were carrying pursuant to that law. Basically, they say, hey, you're in our borders, we're going to prosecute you. So, again, I don't know. That's a sticky issue, because we come back to a little bit of where we started with states' rights versus the federal government's rights. The 10th Amendment has really fallen out of favor, and no one seems to even acknowledge it exists anymore. But to our founding fathers, all those rights not specified in the Constitution and in our founding documents that were given to the federal government were to be retained by the state. So with that, I thank you. I will be here. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Couple of closing announcements. One is we have our candidates night coming up, and I am actually shocked to talk to some people that I come across in my daily walk of life who talk about politics and talk about things. So I asked them about their candidates. Who's that? What do you mean? What's all that about? I mean, it is really shocking where you can spew what you hear on CNN, you can spew what you hear on Fox, but when you actually ask about somebody who's in their own neighborhood, in their own town, they can't tell you a single thing about them. And that really disgusts me, actually. But anyways, next month, you'll get to meet all your candidates. You'll be able to ask them questions, make an informed decision when you go to the voter's booth. And that would be a very good thing, to have more informed voters. As we know, we got the problems we have by non-informed voters. So let's break that, trying to be the informed voters. In November, we're going to have Robert D'Souza. He's from Pat Toomey's office. You'll be able to grill him a little bit, and you know, there's some things that I'm not very much liking that Pat has done, but you know, at least they've agreed to come down and speak. And I know you didn't you just send a letter or something? Well, article, that's right. Yeah, I haven't read it yet, but I just heard about it tonight. Okay. In December, of course, is our annual Veterans Appreciation Month, and it's always the second Thursday. Linda Brancador has a few surprises in store. I can't tell you what they are. She'll beat me to death, so I won't be telling you. We need help. Not only with board members, we need a person to volunteer 1 day a month to do a very simple task. So by a show of hands, who has a pickup truck? Come on, put up a hand. All right. We need somebody. Ed is not going to be able to transport all the totes, and it's only 4 totes that have the t-shirts, etc. in them. We need somebody who's a faithful monthly attendee to take them home. It is 4 totes. If you stack them up, they're no higher than probably this. You can stick them in a closet in your garage or something. But somebody to be responsible for the totes that Ed has. And what, Jake? Oh, it looked like you wanted to say something. Anyways, if you look under Jake's table, they're about the size of that gray box right there.
No, that's, none of them, the rest of them are not that big.
Oh, the rest are not that big. Okay, so you got 1 big one and 3 small ones. So please, someone step up. Again, we'll be having elections in December. We've had a couple people step forward to possibly be on the board. They haven't made a decision yet, but they said they'd think about it. I see many people in this room who we see every month who would probably be very good board members and could volunteer that little bit of time. We meet maybe 2 times a month. We have our general meeting and then we have a regular board meeting. Sometimes we have 2 board meetings, but it's fun. We get together, we have a good time, we eat, obviously, and you know, we try to solve some problems, and many hands make light work, so we really need your help. But, you know, we implore you every month about this, but December's coming, we need help. Deborah and I are going to leave in December or January for Florida. We're not going to enjoy your winter, we're going to enjoy the fun in the sun and be back when spring comes. So, you know, the board needs some help. Well, can't do that. You're going down too, what are you talking about? Oh, not all winter this year, oh, okay. If you have any suggestions about things we can do, Linda has a suggestion, Josh, she'd like to see, you know, people getting involved that way too. If there's something we do you don't like, if there's something you'd like to see us do, if there's some kind of meeting you'd like to see happen, let us know, because we don't know if you don't tell us. But at this time, I'd like to ask Randy to come forward. He can close this meeting in prayer, and
shall we all rise, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the evening, we thank you for the information, and we do ask for guidance as there is so much work to be done for your glory and for your Son's glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
oh, there's no hot dogs left, so poor Jake doesn't have to eat any tonight. We actually got rid of all the hot dogs.